Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ for the fifth Sunday of Lent from the Gospel according to John. The sisters of Lazarus sent word to Jesus to inform him, "Lord, the one you love is sick." Upon hearing this, Jesus said, "This sickness is not to end in death. Rather, it is for God's glory, that through it the Son of God may be glorified." Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus very much. Yet, after hearing that Lazarus was sick, he stayed on where he was for 2 days more. Finally, he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." When Jesus arrived at Bethany, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would never have died. Even now, I am sure that God will give you whatever you ask of him." "Your brother will rise again," Jesus assured her. "I know he will rise again," Martha replied, "in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though they should die, will come to life. And whoever is alive and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I have come to believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, he who is to come into the world." Jesus was troubled in spirit, moved by the deepest emotions. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Lord, come and see," they said. Jesus began to weep, which caused the Jews to remark, "See how much he loved him." But some said, "He opened the eyes of that blind man. Why could he not have done something to stop this man from dying?" Once again, troubled in spirit, Jesus approached the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across it. "Take away the stone," Jesus directed. Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, it has been 4 days now. Surely there will be a stench." Jesus replied, "Did I not assure you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" They then took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd, that they may believe that you sent me." Having said this, he called loudly, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, bound hand and foot with linen strips, his face wrapped in a cloth. "Untie him," Jesus told them, "and let him go free." This caused many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did to put their faith in him. The good news of the Lord. The diagnosis is grim, and suddenly you are painfully aware of your own mortality. So what do? You can shut down in anger and self-pity, or you can live what is left of your life with a new sense of gratitude, a renewed appreciation for those who are most precious to you. The relationship ends. The parting is painful, traumatic, acrimonious. It will take time, but you can gradually embrace the lessons you have learned about yourself and move on, a wiser, kinder, more empathetic individual as a result. The loss is more than you can bear. Your beloved has gone to God. In a way, you have died too. At first, you have no idea how to continue, or if you even want to. Others try to help you work through your grief. At some point, you find peace in realizing that the happiness and sense of fulfillment the two of you created continues. And that is the start of your new life. Death can strike in a million different ways, but not all of those mean the ending of life. Friendships may die. Dreams and hopes for the future may die. A loss of health due to accident, disease, or the inevitable process of aging brings its own kind of dying. Self-image may die, especially when I discover something about myself that I do not like and do not want to admit, even to myself. At other times, we mourn over famine, earthquake, flood, war, and the suffering and sorrow they bring. We grieve over pestilence and disease and the death they cause. And we are disturbed at the evil and corruption in government and society, which ruin so many lives and take such a monstrous toll. We mourn over the terrorism that has become a fact of life in our time, and the loss of innocence and security that we thought was ours. The test you flunk, the job you lose, the mistakes you make, in a variety of ways, dying may touch our lives repeatedly, but none of those have to be endings. They do not have to be entombments. They do not have to be deaths. They can instead be Good Fridays, which, with God's help, you remake into experiences of Easter. Jesus certainly knew about death. In an agrarian society like his, Jesus had certainly seen animals die. At some point, perhaps when he was still a young teenager, he and his mother had to suffer the death of Joseph, perhaps other relatives as well. As fully human as any of us, Jesus certainly felt the pain and sense of loss that accompany death. Lazarus's death was undoubtedly not the first time Jesus had been moved to tears. It was a good thing that Lazarus had been dead 4 days by the time Jesus arrived in Bethany. There could be no doubt that he was dead. You see, Jesus can only bring people to life who first admit that they are dead. Jesus can only heal people who are willing to admit that they are in need of healing. Jesus can only help people who can acknowledge their need for help. And because of the faith of Martha and Mary, Jesus did what he could. He brought Lazarus back to earthly life. But that is not his purpose in having come to this world from above. Jesus comes to give life that cannot be touched by death, so that those who believe in him will never die. Yes, Jesus restored Lazarus to life. Was this resurrection? Not exactly. The day would come when Lazarus would die and there would be no restoration to life. But, and this is the promise that Jesus makes, the promise to which we cling, for Lazarus and for us all, there would be resurrection, a total transformation of life, the full meaning of which we can only guess at now. As St. Paul wrote, "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it entered into the human heart what God has in store for those who love him." At some time in life, we may find ourselves caught up in an obsession or behavior that prevents us from being the kind of spouse, parent, child, friend, or person that we want to be. We can let our anger, disappointment, cynicism, or despair bind us up and bury us in tombs that we cannot extricate ourselves from. The Lenten journey calls us to confront such sin lest we become totally dead to the life that exists around us. When we were baptized, we died to sin. We were buried with Christ, and we were called forth from the watery tomb and given new life. We promised to reject sin so as to live in the freedom of the children of God. In just 2 weeks, with the celebration of Easter, we will renew our baptismal promises. How do I need to reject sin this year? We know from the gospel story that in the tomb, Lazarus was bound with strips of cloth. How might I be tied up? Some substance or drug? An obsession with food or money, sex or power? The constant need to be plugged into some device? Or have my eyes buried in some screen? A perception or attitude that alienates me from others? A family battle that has gone on too long? Often, the most irrational causes can keep us tied hand and foot in Lazarus's tomb. Jesus calls not only to Lazarus, but to all of us, come out. Become free from the wrappings of death. Live to the fullest the life given to you by a loving God. But did you notice that Jesus did not perform this tremendous miracle all by himself? First, he called upon Lazarus's friends and neighbors to take away the stone, and then undo the wrappings. I too may need to call upon other people to help me remove the stone, whatever it is that is keeping Jesus from raising me to new life. And then Jesus called upon his Father to hear his prayer and act through him. Jesus still acts that way. He asks us to help each other remove whatever is keeping us from God and from one another, strip away the wrappings of death, and pray for the help and strength that can only be provided by God. But there you are, isolated in your tomb, a massive stone of anger and resentment sealing the grave you've dug for yourself. Maybe you've tried with all your might to push it away, but it won't budge. And just maybe the other person is just as angry and hurt as you are. So you and they remain buried in the sad, pointless darkness of Lazarus's tomb. Yes, it stinks. But what did you expect? There's a stench to being dead, the constant cynicism, the relentless fear, the refusing to embrace or be embraced by happiness, or daring to hope. Isn't it about time to let some fresh air into Lazarus's tomb? Jesus, who calls Lazarus from his tomb, calls us out of the tombs we dig for ourselves or others in order to walk in the light of hope and possibility. He calls us to live life to the fullest, to bring the love of God into our cold winter world. As Jesus instructs Lazarus's friends to roll away the stone and free Lazarus from his tomb, Jesus calls us to the work of Easter healing and transformation, the work of freeing one another from our graves of hopelessness, alienation, and fear. My brothers and sisters, Lent is a time of transformation, not merely of Jesus through his passion, death, and resurrection, but of all of us, as we die to one way of living in order to rise into another. We cannot accomplish that on our own, any more than Lazarus could walk out of his tomb all on his own. But with faith in Jesus and the loving support of those around us, we can take the first stumbling steps toward the new life of Easter. There is still time. It can be done. You may want to reflect on the entire story of Lazarus's birth from death. You'll find it in the 11th chapter of the Gospel of John. Thanks for listening. Please do share this with others and consider subscribing to this weekly Gospel reflection. You can do that at our website, www.justanother.disciple.com. Once again, www.justanother.disciple.com. Thanks again.